3 rings for the elven kings under the sky. 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone. 9 for mortal men doomed to die. 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne in the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them in the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie.
Let's remove. And hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe. We're back with our co-hosts, my co-host for this very special stream, or series of streams with Matt from DorkLords.
Hey, everyone.
Liver. Yep. And Dan, Chopped Liver.
Oh, no, not at all. It's the brothers. That S at the end is very important.
Brothers Chopped Liver?
Yeah. Okay. No, you actually had a great replacement for the word Krynn, at least at one point, because we keep running into people who keep making Otter accounts, from Otter Pops to Lord Otter. You suggested at one point Brothers Otter instead, just to mock them. But sorry, we've been spending time with some indie fantasy writers on Twitter, and all of them are using Otter.
Okay. Oh, I got it. Yeah.
Username or whatever, and that's hilarious. But anyways, more importantly, how are you, Matt?
I am well, thank you very much. Good times. I'll probably mention this again when we finish, but I finally recorded my latest Tolkien video, which is about a first age. It's got Turin, it's got Tuor, it's got the whole panoply of folks, but it's like I wrote it, then realized it was way too unfocused. It was like X begat so-and-so, who was the next guy's cousin. And I'm like, I got to make this. I was in the weeds. So I redid the whole thing. It is now recorded. I have to edit it, but I am very close to having another Tolkien video out for folks. So I'm excited about that.
Yep. Hello, Mark. And no, I'm not doing that in the black speech.
Yes, well versed. Like learning Spanish.
Yeah. Hail, people of Middle Earth.
Hail, Napdragon.
Oh, I love this username, Napdragon.
Napdragon, an awesome commenter on DorkLords.
Great. And this also fits with the event Dan and I are pretty much heading over on Substack, which we dubbed Dragon Month.
Oh, well, that's right. I saw that. You were talking about it's the month of dragons.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Fatty.
Oh, Larry. we gave Mark the challenge to insert Fatty Bulger and say, like, how Fatty Bulger would have solved all these problems. So that Fatty Bulger would have used black speech. Yes, he would have.
I know he's Chuck Norris of Middle Earth, but like, come on, dude.
The Chuck Norris of Middle Earth.
Yeah, like, come on. He's setting the bar pretty high. I can't measure up ever.
Interestingly, we get in this, we're doing 2 chapters today. We'll talk about why in a second. But in chapter 8, Tom Bombadil's horse, Fatty Lumpkin, feels like Fatty Bulger should have been riding Fatty Lumpkin, but so be it. Anyway. Ahoy, hoy.
Ahoy, hoy.
Reference.
Well met. Yep.
Another cool thing, unrelated necessarily to fantasy, but I'm looking forward to is I have my tickets. My wife and I are going to see Dune Part 2 this weekend, and the reviews on that thing are through the roof. That it's really, really well realized version of Frank Herbert's Dune. So I'm excited about that. I liked Part 1, and apparently Part 2 is even better. So a little plug for that. I'm hoping. Actually, we're going to cover it on DorkLords channel. Paul and I will review it next week. But I'm excited about that, too.
Never watched, never read. Heard a lot about Dune.
Yeah. No, it's quality sci-fi. It's not fantasy, but it's sci-fi, and it's clever, and it's Frank Herbert knew what he was doing. Let's put it that way.
Okay. And here's a slide Matt put together for this awesome
Just
event.
a little visual aid for us.
Yep. Now, real quick, why don't you tell everyone why we're doing 2 chapters this time?
Yeah, so we're going to cover chapters 7 and 8. So we're covering In the House of Tom Bombadil and Fog on the Barrow Downs. And we talked about it. Originally, we're just going to do like we've been doing 1 chapter at a time. But we had already talked in our previous chapter 6, where we introduced to Tom Bombadil. We talked about his origin. We talked about his relationship with Goldberry. We did a lot of, hey, this is Tom Bombadil and his part in this story. And so we felt like perhaps if we just covered In the House of Tom Bombadil, we might just be rehashing what we already had talked about previously. So we thought, you know what? Let's add in Fog on the Barrow Downs, which, incredibly cinematic chapter. Still involves Tom, but has a lot happening that's not Tom related. And so we thought we would give ourselves a little more to talk about with doing 2 chapters.
And what's more is that it gets us quicker to the prancing pony.
You're like, okay, Bree, we got to get there. But the Barrow Downs are awesome. And
I love the Barrow Downs, but I'm just saying, Strider. I love Strider.
And we get a reference to him in this in chapter 8. Basically, Tom just sets him up. It's like, we'll talk about that too. But basically, he's like, you're going to meet Aragorn. You don't know this yet, but he's coming. So Tom knew that prancing pony was coming.
Ah, man, Strider casts such a shadow already. And okay, I know a lot of people love Viggo Mortensen's portrayal. I wasn't the fondest of it, but the book Aragorn is way larger than life than the movie one. And
I got you. Well, no offense to Viggo though. I did really appreciate Viggo's performance, but I got you. Okay, to each his own. Everybody's got their tastes.
But that said, I love most of Viggo Mortensen's roles. Like, no one can portray Sigmund Freud, for example, like Viggo does. Like, Viggo is an amazing actor, but it's just, I don't like my choice for who would have played Aragorn. I still think Aragorn would cast a longer shadow than him. Like, my view is just book Aragorn is just such an awesome character. Like, there's no
You're
one.
right. If you're talking about different, there are certainly differences in the character of Aragorn as portrayed in the book versus the Aragorn that we see in Peter Jackson's trilogy, for sure.
Yeah. Which that Aragorn does get some great moments. Like,
I will say this, as we cover the 2 chapters today, one of the things that I really, when you're talking about things that Peter Jackson left out, obviously he left out this section, the Tom Bombadil section. We talked about that before. But what I really, and I get why he did it, but boy, the thing that I would have really loved to have seen him cover to Peter Jackson, the Barrow Downs. He's got that horror background. This is as gothic horror-y as you can get. It's got all the fog and the tombs and these essentially Anglo-Saxon burial mounds and evil creatures of the night. Like, I think he could have really done some awesome work on it. But again, it is what it is. But yeah. The cinematic quality, the way Tolkien gives you the visual picture of the Barrow Downs, it was just made for moviedom. So anyway.
Sounds like someone wants to get to the prancing pony in order to have some beer. Yeah, okay, I'm outed. I get it. But, don't judge me.
There's no alcohol in the Barrow Downs. That's right.
Yeah. Because they're already a trip and a half.
That's right.
But yeah, like I said, I just love Strider. So,
all right, well, that's coming. That's next time.
Now, I will say this: Viggo nailed that for when you see him in the shadows and whatnot. Viggo Mortensen nailed that scene in the Prancing Pony.
Oh, I see. Right, that when we first meet him in the Prancing Pony. All right, we'll save this for next time. We'll be breaking this down.
Sorry.
No, it's you're excited about it. I like it.
Yeah. Let's be honest, Strider is inspired by and based off of King Arthur. So I love King Arthur, so I love Strider. So
all right, very good. I like it.
Yep. Well, anyways, Matt made this great slideshow, so we'll be going through. I believe because it's on my channel, I have control over the slide, but I'm going to let Matt tell me when he wants me to.
Oh, well, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. This way, because like I might slip up, I might get a little slow at times with it. So if need be, prompt me.
I got you. Just whatever. Yeah, whatever we're talking about. There's there's a few slides of Tom. There's a few slides of there's a map slide, a few slides of the Barrow Downs. So as we talk about something, you can just bring it up.
Yep. So, like I said, I want you to prompt me, and
All right.
I will click the button, and we'll get underway.
Fair enough.
Now, this chapter starts with the intro of a character I really do like, and I will argue is Proto-Galadriel. And
Okay.
the reason I'm saying she's Proto-Galadriel is the way she's described. She's almost elf-like, and in Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey, you have the meeting with the goddess, but Tolkien did it kind of twice in a way, almost 3 times. You have Arwen for one thing, you have Goldberry, and you do have Galadriel, and even to an extent Éowyn, although Éowyn herself is not really a goddess-like figure, but she's on her own hero's journey. But for Mary, she kind of serves that role to an extent.
I got you.
But the thing is, Goldberry is described as being, well, flaxen-haired, and she's beautiful.
We got a picture of Goldberry in there in the slideshow if you want.
Okay, I'll just go.
A photo. No, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Artwork by the 2 other brothers, the Hildebrandt brothers.
Yep. Our direct competition.
That's right.
But yeah, it was a picture taken from the real life Goldberry.
That's right.
But the thing about Goldberry, like I said, is she's Proto-Galadriel in a way. And like I said, it's just, she is very reminiscent, but she's from an earlier story, from the Tom Bombadil story, actually. And she does not play the same role Galadriel does in the novel, because Galadriel is very important. But when this chapter was written, Galadriel was not yet conceived. We got to bear that in mind. Now, in the revising of this story, when Tolkien went back and tried to sync every chapter up properly, like every writer eventually has to do, he did, he was conscious of Galadriel's existence, because, he did that afterwards. But Galadriel is introduced as the daughter of the river, which, yeah, we already went over that last
Yeah, and
time.
you mentioned how you liked the comparison of Strider to King Arthur. I see Goldberry as a little bit of the Lady of the Lake, a little bit of like a water spirit, a water nymph.
Well, that's precisely what she is.
Yeah.
And yeah.
One thing that I actually appreciate about the description is that Tolkien keeps it simple. He keeps the description simple but vivid. It's like the one paragraph, it's a way anyone could write it. If you're going to write and describe someone, don't try to over elaborate.
Yeah,
because
let the imagination kind of fill in the gaps, perhaps.
Yeah, because
but he supplies us with plenty of info about her, like, physically, so that like your imagination will be activated.
Yeah, because in a chair at the far side of the room, facing the outer door, sat a woman. Her long yellow hair rippled down her shoulders. Her gown was green as young reeds, shot with silver like beads of dew, and her belt was of gold shaped like a chain of flag lilies set with the pale blue eyes of forget-me-nots. About her feet in wide vessels of green and brown earthenware, white water lilies were floating so that she seemed to be enthroned in the midst of a pool. Nothing complicated.
Now, there's another reason why I said she's Proto-Galadriel. Both Galadriel and Goldberry are both associated with water and are flaxen-haired and beauteous beyond measure. They're basically, in some ways, archetypally the same character, but they are different characters. I am aware it's just archetypally they're the same.
And to your points about how sometimes less is more in a way of descriptions. I'd read this quote last time, but I think it reminded me of your comment here, so I'll bring it again. It's Tolkien in one of his letters describing how maybe things, leaving things mysterious is a benefit to writing. And so he says, as a story, I think it's good that there should be a lot of things unexplained, especially if an explanation actually exists. And I perhaps from this point of view erred in trying to explain too much and give too much past history. Many readers have, for instance, rather stuck at the Council of Elrond. That's where he gives a big info dump. We're going to get to that eventually.
That info is awesome.
And he says, and even in a mythical age, there must be some enigmas, as there always are. Tom Bombadil is one intentionally. So he even puts that, like, I intentionally left this mysterious. I'm not going to over-explain Goldberry and Tom and their backstory and exactly what they are. I'm going to give you some hints. Let your imagination fill in the rest. And to good effect.
Yep. And we have also Goldberry referencing how Frodo is an elf friend, and that there seems to be some sort of mark of the elves that has been left on Frodo, such as the light in your eyes and the ring in your voice tells it. So there's something, like, I have the theory that now the elves have the light of the two trees that affected them eons ago, but
Noldor in particular, yeah.
Yeah. Now some of the other elves who did not cross the sea got indirect influence via the likes of Melian and whatnot. But the thing here is to remember is that maybe, like, you have Elrond, for example, who's affected by this light very indirectly, going back through his family tree. So my theory is maybe this light is in a muted fashion transmitted to those around the elves if you have enough contact with them.
All right. And we get that sense of there's a bit in the pre-First Age, Feanor and the elves have come across, and they are ambushed by orcs, and they quickly overcome the orcs. And Tolkien writes it's because the light of the trees had not yet dimmed from their eyes. So says the dimming suggests that over time there is maybe a lessening, and so anyway. But yeah.
And so what I'm arguing with Frodo is it is nothing in comparison to the elves themselves, but there's some little itsy bitsy, like nail-sized shard of it in him that Goldberry can detect.
Also, to that point, we hear Tom mentions that he's been in contact with Farmer Maggot, who has described Frodo's predicament, but also it says it was also clear that Tom had dealings with the elves, and it seemed that in some fashion news had reached him from Gildor concerning the flight of Frodo. So either Gildor himself or Gildor sent messengers, but Gildor basically informed Tom, hey, by the way, you might be on the lookout for Frodo. We'll give Gildor a little credit for putting Tom on notice to perhaps save Frodo's life. But that could also be why Tom and Goldberry sense this elvishness about them, because the elves apparently visit them on at least some semi-regular basis. So they have that kind of contact.
Yep. And we also know that there's a connection of sorts hinted at throughout pages, at least in my Red Book edition.
You're actually, sorry, Mark just put this thing down. I think maybe he was anticipating my comment there, where you're saying, think of Gildor, who wanted to inform allies. Maybe Tom's on that list. He certainly was on that list. I mean, it explicitly states it in the chapter. So, yep.
Gildor is the goat. Well, technically, Tom Bombadil is somewhat inspired by Pan from Greek mythology, who was a satyr. So, actually, technically, Tom is.
Tom is an actual goat, but Gildor is the greatest of all time goat. Actually, Gildor, I did a video on him a while back, but Gildor, his warnings and his the messengers he sends out are all very helpful in this, especially this first stage. Getting Frodo to Rivendell, I don't think he gets there without Gildor helping him out from the behind the scenes. So kudos to Gildor. He comes through again.
And we also get referenced from pages 123 to 125 of at least the Red Book edition of earthenware, basins and earthenware stuff and tools and whatnot. Now, this might not seem like much, but it does hint at a connection between Tom and the earth, which this goes back to Pan, who does have a strong connection to forests and hills and fields and the earth and nature. So this is where Tolkien is reinforcing the idea that Bombadil and even Goldberry are very, I guess you'd say, natural beings. They're essentially both. Okay, if this was I'll make a Shinto reference here. They're spirits of the forest and of the river in a way. Like they're a raw part of nature itself.
I couldn't help but think of the word ethereal.
Yeah, they are ethereal, but they're also far more connected to nature than we humans ever will be.
I'll say this too. Even at this picture that we have up, kind of is somewhat instructive of this in the chapter. There's a lot of references to light and light sources in this chapter. So at the end of chapter 6, which we left last time, they come out of the fog of the forest, and they get to Bombadil's house. Chapter 7, they're at the house. We get candlelight, we get lamplight, sunlight, starlight. Everything is lit. And then as soon as they leave Tom's house and they get to the Barrow Downs, the fog returns. So it's like this break, this little bubble of security that through light that is pushing the fog away from the two chapters that bookend this particular one. I thought that was intentional.
Yep. Votives at the altar. We have Robert Den Duvin.
Do you think Gildor and Zells cross the Brandywine at the bridge, or another way where hobbits would not see it? Okay. Yeah, I feel like Gildor, I think he went on ahead. So I think it's reasonable to think that he could have crossed at the Brandywine ahead of them. I mean, you're right that little ferry doesn't take everybody perhaps at one time. So yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure that the book answers that, but the fact that they got these elves got around fast suggests that they probably took the quickest route, which would probably be the ferry.
Yeah. On page 126 of the Red Book edition, we find out, we get a song by Tom, which there's no way we can't discuss this song. I had an errand there gathering water lilies, because he's explaining, I think, how he met Goldberry.
And it's also what he was doing when he found the hobbits with Old Man Willow. So he was gathering water lilies for her.
Yep. This is what he was doing when he happened upon them. I had an errand there gathering water lilies, green leaves and lilies white to please my pretty lady. The last ere the year's end to keep them from the winter, to flower by her pretty feet till the snows are melted. Each year at summer's end I go to find them for her, in a wide pool deep and clear, far down Withy Windle. There they open first in spring, and there they linger latest. By that pool long ago I found the river daughter, fair young Goldberry sitting in the rushes. Sweet was her singing then, and her heart was beating. And that proved well for you, for now I shall no longer go down deep again along the forest water, not while the year is old, nor shall I be passing Old Man Willow's house this side of springtime, not till the merry spring, when the river daughter dances down the Withy path to bathe in the water. So, yeah, he explains both his first meeting with her this way and what he was doing, like I said, and like you said, what he was doing when he first happened upon the hobbits.
We've also determined that she's a Disney princess.
Yes.
We have another slide that shows I think Tom and Goldberry as well together.
All right.
Well, that's them coming to the house, which is fine too. But yeah, I was thinking of that one.
Yep. All right. I'll leave this one on. Whoa, I gotta catch up to the chat. Sorry about that, chat. Now another thing. Thinking of Tom's home, now I wonder: is Rivendell doing false advertisement with the slogan "The Last Homely Home"? No, Rivendell is better.
Hey, it's the last homely house. I feel, except the amazing security bubble that is Tom Bombadil's house. But yeah, okay.
But bear in mind, Tom Bombadil's
No,
house,
it's actually, you're right. It's going the other direction.
Tom Bombadil's house is also next to the Barrow Downs. So
yeah, and next to the old forest, which apparently is terrible to try to navigate.
So not that homely, given the neighborhood. Fatty Bolger would have sung it. I know, Mark, but
yep.
I'm tired and I can't sing. So
you're no Frediger, unfortunately.
No, I'm no Fatty Bolger. I don't have the fat either for it. So come on, man. Show some mercy. Show some pity. Come on. This is like comparing me to Chuck Norris or Kyle Katarn. I can't compare. I know.
You can't compare. Exactly. It's fool's errand. You got to compare yourself to Frediger Bolger.
Yeah. Oh man, I love the fatty references this stream. He does deserve all this love. He does. But we get throughout this chapter a lot of, not much happens if we're being blunt, because
they go to sleep and have dreams. That's kind of the big. And there is one important event. It's the involving the ring, but that's another crucial moment.
We'll get to it. And the thing is, we find out on page 130, just to get to the lore, that the Barrow Downs are whispered of and spoken of in very hushed tones. It inspires a lot of dread amongst the hobbits. And I believe I found a part which I found was very interesting regarding the lore. Let me just look it up.
All right.
Regarding, how they heard of the great barrows and the green mounds and the stone rings upon the hills and in the hollows among the hills. Sheep were bleating in flocks. Green walls and white walls rose. There were fortresses on the heights. Kings of little kingdoms fought together, and the young sun shone like fire on the red metal of their new and greedy swords. There was victory and defeat. Metal of their... already read that. There was victories and defeat, and towers fell, fortresses were burnt, and flames went up into the sky. Gold was piled on the biers of dead kings and queens, and mounds covered them, and the stone doors were shut, and the grass grew over all. Sheep walked for a while, biting the grass, but soon the hills were empty again. A shadow came out of dark places far away, and the bones were steered in the mounds. Barrowites walked in the hollow places, with a clink of rings on cold fingers and gold chains in the wind. Stone rings grinned out of the ground like broken teeth in the moonlight. This is one of the most chilling paragraphs in this part of the book. And honestly, I love it. And I had to recite this part. And I love that we get a bit of lore. And I love that we find out about how it's not exactly a detail that's explored very often, especially amongst Tolkien channels, Tolkien tubers, is that with the fall of the old dynasty that Aragorn belongs to, of the Númenórean line, it's very likely that every county, every shire, every region of Arnor, you had a little king that arose. Basically, it's like Ireland after the O'Neills lost what little control they had, and before the rise of Brianborough. So you've got 1,000,001 kings in the region. So everybody's a king, basically. and everybody squabbling over non-existent crowns. It's a state of warring states. And this is a detail I really like, and that's not really explored with good reason because, this is a much more Irish kind of bit of folklore.
I did an Arnor division video as well, in which I kind of compared it more to after Charlemagne, kind of the way the.
That's exactly what it is. Sorry for interrupting.
No, exactly. But yes, okay, good point.
The three brothers, but I meant after their fall.
Oh, I see. Post Three Brothers, understood.
Yeah. After the line of Isildur falls, you have more, like, I'm arguing it became more like Ireland or something, where you've got a king in every corner. And the thing is, like, you got to bear in mind, every lord is basically probably doing the gavel kind succession method. So every piece of property is being divided into 3 or 4 or to 5 pieces. And so eventually that just, it divides ever more and decentralizes ever more. And for one thing, I think decentralization is overall a very good thing at times, but the trouble in a lot of cases in the Middle Ages is that you had a lot of warring states periods when you had too much decentralization, because you want a good balance. And the problem with the medieval period is, like, for example, after Charlemagne's death and after all central authority was destroyed in the reign of his son, Louis le Débonnaire, or Louis le Pure, the trouble is that you have a warring states period for France, which lasts until Philippe Auguste. And that's almost, that's almost about 350 years or so, almost. And Ireland had several centuries of this sort of thing. England had
a few different civil wars for sure.
Yeah.
And when you look at Gavelkind, worst form of inheritance, go take a look at the Reconquista for that.
Yeah. Now, that said, the best method of choosing someone to run your country, choosing a head of state, is obviously mentioned in Monty Python as basically being
strange women lying in ponds distributing swords.
Yeah, that's the best form of government because honestly, it works.
And so, to your point about the warring states, here obviously the state that caused the most mischief and damage, Angmar. We're going to hear more about that as we get into the Barrow Downs, but the Witch King and Angmar definitely served to. He saw the wedge that was forming in Arnor, and he drove right through it.
Now, Rivendell is near Moria. Fair enough. But
ish. I mean, it's not like right outside the door. You got to go a little ways.
Yeah.
But as opposed to the Barrow Downs, which seem to be within, like, I don't know, 100 yards. You can pull up the map. Actually, I have a map on the thing as well. But yeah, it's like they get there within the morning. They're like, oh, it's the Barrow Downs. Oh yeah, don't go here. It's terrible, and if you're here at night, you'll die.
Now we have the Freddy Bulger challenge. Sadly doesn't allow for mercy.
It does not.
Fine, okay. Oh man, Mark's really.
Mark brings it up. So he gets closer. Is the path? The giants throwing rocks. That's more of a problem, perhaps. And of course, the goblins of the Misty Mountains are pretty damn close to Rivendell as well.
I'd forgotten about the rock giants. Yeah. Sounds like High Rock. Lulz. Jeez, the chat's on fire today.
I like it. Pull up the map if you don't mind there for a second. We'll just to give an idea of where we are in relation to everything. So you see the house of Tom Bombadil right at the eastern edge of the old forest, but he's basically right next to the Barrow Downs. What they want to try to do is get to that great road and then take it into Bree. And that's where that's chapter 8 when that manifests itself. So they have some issues getting there. One of the issues being they just like to sit down and take a nap in a graveyard. As you do.
Yep. Hey, it's what I would do. Hey, come on. We've all taken naps in graveyards.
Yeah.
Just ask Link from Legend of Zelda. Now let's see. We've got on page 132, I believe. Now I made a really strange note. Oh, right. We have reference to how Farmer Maggot is not exactly as he seems. That there's earth under his old feet and clay on his fingers, wisdom in his bones, and both his eyes are open. So that we learn that Tom's got quite a bit of respect for him.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And so the fact that they communicate also means that Farmer Maggot has ventured pretty damn far into, has he gone through the old forest to get to Tom, or does he go around the old forest? It's a little confusing on that, but to say that, yeah, Farmer Maggot leaves his farm apparently quite a bit.
And Tom also does something very interesting. Well, I should say Goldberry does this very interesting thing where she sings to them songs that began merrily in the hills and fell softly down into silence. And the silences they saw in their minds, pools and waters wider than any they had known. And looking into them, they saw the sky below them and the stars like jewels in the depths. And that's very interesting because it's like they're above even the stars, so that, or at least that's almost the visual I got.
I got you. She's put them, as you mentioned earlier, Dan, ethereal, right?
Yeah, it's a very ethereal scene. So that's a good word there, Dan.
Because the psychologist in me, not a professional psychologist, but the psychology major that loves analyzing people, I have a hard time really getting a true grasp of both Goldberry and Tom Bombadil.
Yeah, they're chaos.
They're chaotic, they're ethereal, and that is done intentionally. And you get characters like that.
Well, what I love is that they are clearly not human. And there's something that I like that Tolkien and Howard did with a lot of the, certain characters in their literature. And that's that you have times when characters who are not human do not seem very human. And I'm going to actually criticize something about the fantasy genre. Something that annoys me, like I do appreciate it to an extent, but we've come so far down the line that we've humanized every character. Like elves are no longer these fairy type creatures, these wondrous and terrible creatures that have nothing in common with us to being basically humans with pointy ears. And sure, to an extent, that's what Fingolfin and Feanor were, but they're so wondrous and terrible, they surpass all human imagining. At the same time, you have Tom and Goldberry. You've got even Zaltotun and Akivasha. They completely surpass all human imagining. They're utterly inhuman, and there's something very, very different about them. But this is something that the fantasy genre has steadily moved away from.
It's like, where's your elephant tower?
Yeah, like the thing is, there should be some mystery. There should be some mystique,
some wonder.
On that point, let's just jump real fast then to this moment when Tom puts the ring on, because I think it goes into this idea that he's not human, or he's not. His humanity is in question. So. Yeah. It says, then Tom put the ring round the end of his little finger and held it up in the candlelight. For a moment, the hobbits noticed nothing strange about this. Then they gasped. There was no sign of Tom disappearing. Tom laughed again. He spun the ring in the air, and it vanished in a flash. Frodo gave a cry. Tom leaned forward and handed it back to him with a smile.
Yeah,
so the fact that Tom makes that ring disappear, then hands it back without a thought, really just shows his complete mastery over the ring's influence.
Now,
and so it's not that Tom overcomes temptation to the ring. It's that the ring has zero effect on him. And you think about that. We see the ring tempting are hobbits, Boromir, Galadriel, Gandalf, but not Tom. And so I think this passage cuts strongly against that notion. And you hear this sometimes when people are guessing what Tom might be, and people think that Tom might be a Maya spirit. I think this cuts against that because, the Mire of the Third Age, at least, Gandalf, Sauron, we don't know enough about Radagast, but they're all obsessed with either acquiring or destroying the ring. The ring influences the Maiar, and Tom is completely immune. So I see Tom as he's a force of nature cosplaying as a human almost. Like he has all the trappings of the idyllic life of a woodsman. But I think his humanity is a projection rather than something innately felt. Now, and an example of that, spoiler alert, we're going to get this quote a little later from the Council of Elrond, but the council's considering the seemingly reasonable choice of giving the ring to Tom for protection. Here's this guy who it doesn't affect him. He's got this bubble of security. Why not? And Gandalf responds with this quote: "He might do so if all the free folk of the world begged him, but he would not understand the need. And if he were given the ring, he would soon forget it, or most likely throw it away. Such things have no hold on his mind." And so I think that quote, it just plays well to the theory that he's one step removed from a being with wants and needs.
Now, what I find funny is that he would just chuck it away.
Right. Or like he'd put it on a shelf and then forget about it. Like, oh yeah, that's where I left my lunch. That kind of, like, he would just whoop, whoop, and it would, he'd forget about it. And so, if you gave any sentient creature a task of protecting the ring from Sauron, I think they would realize the importance of that task. But the fact that Tom would forget it, I think it's because he doesn't actually feel it. He doesn't feel that need. He just temporarily knows it's important because somebody like Gandalf would tell him, this is important. He'd be like, oh, got it. It's important. A year goes by. What? Whatever. I got to rake the yard. He's got the projection of humanity without feeling humanity, is my thought.
I think there's an aspect of order and chaos here because the ring wants people to feel more chaotic.
Well, no, the ring is vice itself in a way, but it's a direct, like, it's part of Sauron in a way. And Sauron is a force of order, so that's where his very person, his very essence cannot affect Tom. Tom is beyond Sauron.
He is a form of chaos unleashed.
Yeah, but he's the Joker, basically. So
Tom Bombadil.
Yeah.
Some people want to watch the world burn.
Yeah. We have Thomas Ryan. Maggot is another of those deep, strong English characters, far wiser and grounded than Fur. Yeah.
He comes off as this doddering guy in big boots, but he's I think it's an image he likes to project to basically have everybody underestimate him.
Now, if Goldberry sings of the sea and stars and she has a father, Osei or even Ulmo himself, just putting it in the room, I'd say probably Osei. He's more connected to rivers, I believe, than Ulmo, because the surf and whatnot.
Agree, but I feel like I'm thinking they're not of that of Maiar descent. But I hear what you're saying. If that were the case, then yes, they would be kind of under that tutelage, under that branch for sure.
Yeah, they're purely fantastic. Yeah, weird and alien. Yep, wasn't gonna miss this. I'm glad. They're Manwë and Varda. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun thought. But yeah, you could probably write an essay and make that case, but I feel like that's not the case.
I can't remember if the distance in miles is given between the Brandywine and Bree. I think it was said it was a one-day ride. Is that correct? Thereabouts.
I feel like it might be longer than 1 day, but it's if it's longer than a day, we're talking a couple of days.
Yeah, Finrod was the most beloved of all the princes of the Noldor. Yep.
I'm in with the Finrod, and every any good good comments on Fiendrod. I'm up for.
Yeah, puts it on his Mercury finger, Paulman's.
I like that. I like that little, who knows? Yeah, he puts the ring on his little finger, is what he's saying. And so you're wondering if perhaps Tolkien intentionally maybe oh, look, I wonder if he was trying to think of them. I like it.
Yeah, but I'd also argue it's not just a reference to Mercury, but the
The fact that the ring was sized for Frodo, perhaps.
Yeah, well, I was also going to say the thing about the Mercury finger is that I tend to also think when it comes to Tolkien and Howard, they often look to Norse mythology in a lot of cases, as well as Greek. So it's not just Mercury, but Othin here. So like you have Othin and Mercury, that there's a double reference with that Mercury finger. So
you have
just put it out there.
You have some
not natural to
trickery.
Middle-earth. Yeah.
Last time in our previous discussion, I kind of did a little comparison of Tom to Orpheus. So similar
That's also
idea.
a good reference. He is not connected to the world like most people are. Yep. Goldberry is different than Bombadil. Yeah, they're two different beings.
Yeah, agreed.
I would argue probably more connected to Middle-earth than Bombadil is. Now, in my notes, we already covered what I was kind of getting to next, which was the Tom.
Sorry, I jumped ahead. I got you. But I thought, I'll link it. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. But we've also got, interestingly, Frodo, who becomes annoyed that Tom made fun of the ring in a way, so that we can see it's already got a bit of a hold on him and his personality.
Yeah, and then he has to check to see if it still works, I think is the idea. Like, he's like, wait, it didn't work for Tom? Does that mean it doesn't make me invisible? And so I think that's part of his impulse to put it on, is to make sure like it is working, right? Oh yeah, okay, great.
Now, I'm actually going to say something a little weird. This is something I actually think kind of worked better with Peter Jackson, so that the first time the ring is put on, it's a bit more dramatic rather than just, he just suddenly slipped it on. Like, this is one thing where I don't actually agree with Tolkien. I think that's such an important decision being made just so casually is, I don't know. I don't agree with this creative decision on Tolkien's part. And this is going to be one of the few times I'll say this. I think he made a mistake.
All right, fair enough.
And I have a lot of criticism about. Now, I love Tolkien, but this is a decision I think I cannot agree with in any way. And I actually think I'm going to shame Jack Lewis, Warnie Lewis, Edith, and Christopher a lot more, and the other Inklings. They should have taken him to task for this and told him, rewrite this one part. Now, I know Tolkien, when he'd rewrite just one part of a chapter, he'd want to rewrite the whole darn book from the very beginning. But the thing is, they would have to actually slap him in irons and keep him from doing that. But the thing is, just rewrite this one little detail. Maybe have Frodo first put on the ring in the Barrow Downs or something. But
I think perhaps part of the inspiration for it is I think he wanted to show that Tom could still see him while he was invisible. I think that was really the impetus. Like, not only does the ring not affect Tom, Tom can see you even if you have the ring on, which puts him in this elevated state.
Yeah,
anyway,
I do like that. But I think that creatively, that could have been done with Frodo running from the Barrow Downs to get him to help, and he sees Frodo even when he has the ring on. You could have done something like that, but I just think just him slipping it on, I don't know, willy-nilly is... You
just felt there wasn't enough import behind this particular moment of putting it on. I got you.
To the extent that it actively, no offense, annoys me. And
yes, Tom is a master of hide and seek. Yes.
Yeah.
Also, Thomas. Yes, we'll talk about that in a second. He says Bombadil engineers the destruction of the Witch King. You can make that case. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. Iluvatar's limited physical presence in the world is Bombadil, shaped by it certainly, but still informed by that. Tom pushes levers that sets all kinds of things in motion. Important things. I'll get to that in a minute. Manwë is closest in fought to Iluvatar. Yep. Bombadil engineers the destruction of the Witch King. Yep.
Destruction of Sauron via Gandalf. Oh, okay, because he does talked to Gandalf quite a bit, apparently.
Yep. Man, Tom must be a real master of hide and seek. Yep. Frodo was negatively influenced by the ring and wanted to make sure he wasn't being hoodwinked. He wanted to know it was the same ring.
Yeah. Agreed. Like, yeah, great point too. Not just does this ring still work? Like, did Tom just switch rings on me and give me a like a Cracker Jacks prize?
Now, that said, I'll say real quick that this is Tom also kind of manipulating Frodo into putting it on in the first place, because I think, like, because he did that, Frodo did put it on, and thus that leads to the destruction of the One Ring long term. But on the other hand, I don't think there is a direct connection between the Iluvatar and Bombadil in a way, as it is theorized. Okay, this is going back to the Silmarillion in Agnor and Andrath, that by Finrod Felagund, that Iluvatar can be defined as the author of Middle-earth in a way, like a writer or a poet. But the thing is, he will eventually insert himself into his own creation in a way, taking on physical shape. And I'm not preaching here, but one has to bear in mind Tolkien was a very passionate Catholic. So his idea was that this was Catholic fiction, and that Iluvatar he's a Anglo-Saxon mythological version of God. And so God would eventually take on mortal shape and form in the form of Jesus. And thus, there's that kind of thing going on. So Jesus is Iluvatar, not Tom Bombadil. But I'm not saying, like, you don't have to, like, it's not read the Lord of the Rings, then read the Bible. Like, that's not what I'm saying. It's not a prequel to the Bible. I'm just saying there is, like, I know I'm saying it very clumsily, and uncomfortably. It's just, much as I'm Christian, I don't really like I like Lord of the Rings, I like Hour of the Dragon, but I don't read them as like part of the Bible or something. They're mythological. They're just great high literature by Howard and Tolkien. So, I don't mix my faith with this sort of book. But.
And while we're talking about who or what Tom Bombadil is, there is a phrase he gives, or he describes himself, and I'll read it out. But basically, he gives, like, it's a series of marks of time that we can kind of figure out. Oh, well, he was alive before then. He was alive before then. So he says, "Eldest, that's what I am. Mark my words, my friends. Tom was here before the river and the trees. Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. He made paths before the big people and saw the little people arriving." That would be hobbits in the Third Age. He was here before the kings and the graves and the Barrow Wights. Earliest graves, which we'll talk about, created in the First Age. So he was here before then. When the elves passed westward, Tom was here already. That is actually the oldest reference in this line. Before the seas were bent, that's before the downfall of Numenor, which is Second Age. He knew the dark under the stars when it was fearless, before the Dark Lord came from outside. So when the elves passed westward, that is during the years of the trees. So we're talking pre-First Age. He's saying he was around when the elves first journeyed west.
And before the Dark Lord showed up, that could be interpreted.
Depends on which Dark Lord you mean, but yeah.
If it would likely be Morgoth.
So you're talking, easily pre-First Age, way, 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 way long ago. But just to say, some of that stuff is like Third Age stuff, but then some of it's like, whoa, okay, really, really old. So
we're jumping possibly back before even the two lamps. And so he's impossibly old.
Yeah. Oldest and fatherless, which I believe is actually what Yarwin Benadar means, but leader of the flock. You're right, Thomas. He very well. I mean, we get the sense that perhaps he was there at creation. Yeah.
Yep. Merlin Falcon. Yep. That's a good reference. Blue jacket, yellow boots, blue feathers, yellow legs. Yep. Merlin Falcon. Now, Merlin, as we all know, is a Arthurian sorcerer, so there's also an association right there. And blue in French symbolism is associated with royalty. So there's something very, very important about Tom. And yellow can be associated with gold, but it's also a maternal color to an extent. So there's a lot to unpack about Tom. He's very unique. He's very important. And yeah, he was there at creation. Yes. Eldest and fatherless. Yeah.
The Arwine.
Yeah.
So then we have, because they are now safely in his protection, although they've had these terrifying events before now, they get to fall asleep and dream safely in the house of Bombadil. And each of our hobbits has their own version of a dream.
Yep. What's interesting is that he also teaches them a song that can.
Oh, right. Yes. So this is the stop, drop, and roll type thing. It's like, if you're in danger, it's ho, Tom Bombadil, Tombadillo, by water, wood, and hill, by the reed and willow, by fire, sun, and moon, hearken now and hear us. Come, Tom Bombadil, for our need is near us.
I love that rhyme. But what I also like is that, well, you could also say, who you going to call? The Ghostbusters.
He does come with a giant hearse with a big horn on it. Yep.
Although that said, the Ghostbusters would have been useful in the Barrow Downs.
Oh, hell yeah, exactly. He is it's a good reference, actually.
But chapter 8 starts with, I just want to quickly reference how you have several references to the color green, direct and indirectly. So we know, place of safety, and it's, there's a lot of associations with eternity on the part of green as being the eternal color, but it's also, like a color of life. It's a very bright color. And
it's also my favorite coler, FYI, but there you go.
Okay.
I'm Tom Bombadil, apparently. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wear blue and I wear these giant yellow boots all the time. No, I don't do that.
All right, let's see. He is a witness to it for Eru, not a participant, maybe a guardian. That's a good theory. Manway's color is blue. Yep.
Okay. Good call.
So that proves it. Manway is French. The small challenges to the hobbits forces their growth. Yep.
Oh, okay. So you're saying he's like he's giving them little trials to overcome. All right, that's an interesting idea.
Before they,
he's like their dad almost. Like, hey, look, kids, we're gonna send you out in the world.
His challenges are not as fierce as those they will encounter soon afterwards. Now we got, on the other hand, we got them basically saying farewell to Goldberry, who says, "Speed now, fair guests, and hold to your purpose. North with the wind in the left eye and a blessing on your footstep. Make haste while the sun shines. Farewell, elf friend. It was a merry meeting." And
I'll say this real fast, just this before we leave this chapter, just summing up the dreams that we had. We had Pippin has a dream. He's basically PTSDing being captured by Old Man Willow. We have Sam doesn't dream at all. Sleeps like a log, it says. We have Frodo has two dreams. He has a dream of the past because a few days earlier, Gandalf was rescued from Isengard, chronologically speaking. He didn't know that, but he has a dream of Gandalf being saved from Isengard. He then has a dream, as we find out, pays off at the end of Return of the King, of him sailing to the west. The dream that's a little odd, a little tough to figure out, is Mary's dream. So Mary has a dream of drowning. He's in a place and it's filling with water, and he's terrified of it. Now that could just be, again, PTSD from he was on the banks of the Withywindle, and then he was fearing for his life. Could be. There is after Isengard is assaulted by the Ents. There is a passage in which Mary mentions, "Oh, we were kind of scared for our lives for a bit because the water was rising in Isengard and we had to climb up." but that's a little weak. But I'm thinking it's more just like general PTSD, much like Pippin. But what's interesting, I was researching this, in one of his letters, Tolkien discussed a recurring dream he had, and it was about drowning. So I'm just going to read this thing from the letter because it's really interesting. So he says, discussing his recurring dream, what I might call my Atlantis haunting. That's what he called it. This legend or myth or dim memory of some ancient histories always troubled me. In sleep, I had the dreadful dream of the ineluctable wave, either coming out of the quiet sea or coming in, towering over the green inlands. It still occurs occasionally, though now exorcised by writing about it. It always ends by surrender, and I awake gasping out of deep water. I used to draw it or write bad poems about it. When C.S. Lewis and I tossed up, he was to write on space travel and I on time travel. I began an abortive book of time travel, of which the end was to be the presence of my hero in the drowning of Atlantis. This was to be called Numenor, the land in the west. It's kind of an interesting little look into how Numenor maybe came about in his mind. It's obvious connections to Atlantis, but the fact that he, I guess a lot of us maybe have that dream of either drowning or lost at sea. For me, it was I'd be swimming in there was this indoor public pool when we were on an army base in Germany, and we used to go there all the time, like a YMCA type thing. Yeah. And so I would have this dream that I was in that pool, and then I would start to sink, and then as I got below the surface, there was a shark. And it just scared the crap out of me, and I'd wake up like, oh, but so I guess he's giving Mary maybe a dream that's somewhat common to a lot of folks when they have nightmares.
Let's see.
A little referendum reference that Tom's more okay. Yeah.
I see that Tom is more like referendum than any character in the Legendarium. He seems like he is visiting Arda, but has always been there. Very good point. Bombadil is Humpty Dumpty. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, sure. Yes. There's no wrong answers.
Now, our hero's journey, down into the Barrow Downs. And apparently they're not looking for a good time. I had to throw in the Mummy because we saw the Mummy Returns recently. So they end up, going around and around and ending up there. And
we'll say that they weren't just foolish, that perhaps the spirits, the whites themselves, made them sleepy. We'll go with that.
Yeah, I got the impression that the Barrow Downs found them.
Yeah. Oh, and that's a great point. Hang on. I found this in the appendices. Where is it? We get a timeline. Okay, here it is. So, is this what I'm thinking? Yeah. Okay, actually, this is from Unfinished Tales. But it gives the timeline. It basically shows that the Witch King arrives at the Barrow Downs a few days before this and basically summons up the Barrow Wights to be antagonists. So it says, this is from the Unfinished Tales. But the Black Captain, Witch King, established a camp at Androth, where the Greenway passed on in a defile between the Barrow Downs and the South Downs. And from there, some others were sent to watch and patrol the eastern borders, while he himself visited the Barrow Downs. In notes on the movements of the Black Riders at that time, it is said that the Black Captain stayed there for some days, and the Barrow Wights were roused, and all things of evil spirit, hostile to elves and men, were on the watch with malice in the old forest and on the Barrow Downs. So basically, the Witch King rouses these wights, which is probably why they're as ready to pounce as they are. Nope. Did we lose our brothers? Oh, there you are.
Yep.
I got you back.
Yeah, and let me just move this slide. I was just trying to.
Oh yeah, so I just pulled an actual barrow mound from Wiltshire.
Awesome, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'd love to visit one of those.
Right, to see one of those in person. Probably have some folks out here who live in Europe who probably visited some of those in person before.
Yeah. If you do, holy shoot, you are lucky. Let me see. As in, Tom is the catalyst between the children's stories and charters in The Hobbit, with the more mature legendarium that the Hobbits officially enter in Lord of the Rings. Yeah. Well, what's going on is that, like, up until the Prancing Pony, we are still in the children's stories. These are, like, at its darkest in terms of the Barrow Downs, you have the Brothers Krynn style type of story here. But before that, you have more the whimsical, really kiddie-friendly Hobbit-style stories and Rotherandom and whatnot.
And
But
because
then-
this was a story that he wrote completely separate from Lord of the Rings, and then he
Yeah.
melded it in. So yeah, it does have that kid
Yeah.
story feel to it for sure.
And the thing about the Prancing Pony chapter is that this is when we leave the realm of fairy stories and children's stories for the larger legendarium. And maybe that's why I like the Prancing Pony so much, and I'm really keen to get there, is because I love the Silmarillion, I love the larger legendarium, I love Rohan, I love Gondor, Arnor, and all the rest. So I don't know, I've always loved that stuff more than the child stories. So I guess, well, actually, it's all child stories, but like, I prefer that legendarium stuff to the more whimsy and I guess you could say fairy story stuff. That said, the ring drew the spirits of evil. There was no way to get through without ensnaring them, rousing them. They were related to his spirit. Without the hobbits being ensnared. Fair point. I've seen the Etruscan tombs in Italy. Very similar. Ooh.
Very nice, very nice. Jealous of your travels.
I'm dead serious.
I'm dead serious about Humpty Dumpty. All right. I don't know enough about Humpty Dumpty's background except to say that I feel like it was a historical figure as opposed to a big egg. But yeah.
I only visited some which don't have any kind of entrances in the middle of the woods. There's an atmosphere there, especially on days that are not sunny. Ooh.
Like, I mean, I visited Stonehenge, for instance, but that's, yeah, like walking into a barrow would be like a really, really moving experience.
Yeah. When I was in Japan, there were a few barrows, especially of the ancient Yamato Taikoku period, or Yamato period. And it's, well, I think it's the Koku period or something. It's a very ancient period from 1600 years ago and whatnot. And it, well, I had to, yeah, like I didn't even know I walked past one. But the thing is, it's right there in the middle of Nagoya, and it's there was an atmosphere, and it was a very interesting place, but I was in a rush, so I only paused for a minute to feel the atmosphere and kept going. But
stop to smell the roses. Gotcha.
Yeah, I should have stopped and taken a look. But Japan has its own barrows, so maybe at some point when I'm out there, I'll take a couple of pictures of their barrows and post them up. Takes a lot of
he's on the Humpty Dumpty train. I'm interested in this, by the way, David, so maybe offline, if you want to send me a comment on one of my DorkLords videos, I keep track of all those comments. Give me your reasoning. Tom Bombadil equals Humpty Dumpty. I'm all for it.
Now, one thing I love, and I really made clear in my notes here, is on page 140 of the Red Book edition, there's I love how, well, I'll just read the paragraph. I love this paragraph. Here, said a voice, deep and cold, that seemed to come out of the earth. I am waiting for you. No, said Frodo, but he did not run away. His knees gave and he fell on the ground. Nothing happened, and there was no sound. Trembling, he looked up, in time to see a tall, dark figure like a shadow against the stars. It leaned over him. He thought there were two eyes, very cold, though lit with a pale light that seemed to come from some remote distance. Then a grip stronger and colder than iron seized him. The icy touch froze his bones, and he remembered no more. I love this paragraph. Now, what's also interesting is that Howard in The Hour of the Dragon references how Zaltotun and Akivasha have bright glowing eyes. And at the time of our Dragon Hour streams with the other two Conan tubers we did so much content with, we theorized it might be because they were of the ancient Acheronian race. But now I'm thinking maybe it was like a thought just occurred to me. Maybe Howard was thinking along similar lines as Tolkien, and that really it's because, both Zaltotun and Akivash are undead. They're not really amongst the realm of the living, and so there's some sort of deathly element about them that has their eyes still gleaming and glittering the way they do. And that this is what this chapter is, this one paragraph reminds me of, so that we have maybe Tolkien and Howard thinking along similar lines with these bright glowing eyes.
There's a reason why when I read this, I couldn't help but reading about the Horned King in the book of 3 of the Prydain Chronicles. Maybe Lloyd Alexander took inspiration from this.
Yeah, the Barrowites.
There's a lot of the Cauldron-born that is very similar, or was probably more taken inspiration from this.
Yep.
And I'm going with the mentality that Alexander may have read Lord of the Rings.
Oh, not may? He definitely did. He definitely did. There's no way he didn't.
I would concur that that's yeah. Well found, Dan.
But
I like it.
The most interesting thing is the similarity with Howard's undead having glowing eyes. And
well, it's also interesting that, we get the thing, for instance, it grabs Frodo. We see this picture here from the drawing from John Howe, very, evocative. So it can affect the material world. It's not just an ephemeral spirit.
Mhm.
We hear it talk. We hear it. It has its chant. The poem it does. It's like just trying to do like it's anti Tom Bombadil, but it's cold be hand and heart and bone, and cold be sleep under stone. Never more to wake on stony bed, never till the sun fails and the moon is dead. In the black wind the stars shall die, and still on gold here let them lie, till the Dark Lord lifts his hand over dead sea and withered land. So these creatures have autonomy, like a bit. They're not just ghosts, for lack of a better term. They do have substance. They have memory. They can talk. There's a lot going on there, that they're not just things that go bump in the night. Yep.
And in response, Frodo ends up turning to Tom Bombadil. Ho, Tom Bombadillo, by water, wood, and hill, by the reed and willow, by fire, sun, and moon, hearken now and hear us. Come, Tom Bombadil, for our need is near us. It was either that or who are you going to call? Ghostbuster.
I'll say this. If I was in his shoes, I'm Frodo. I'm in the middle of this. I wake up. I'm inside a barrow. There's a creature coming. My friends are all in a catatonic with a sword across their necks. I wouldn't remember that poem. I'd be like, Tom? Hello? Like the fact that he remembers the verse. I give him credit. He's under pressure. He just learned that thing like less than 24 hours ago. I would have forgotten that thing I'd be like, damn it, Tom, Cigarello. I don't know. Damn it. So credit to Frodo. Great under pressure. Remembers the phrase that pays and saves himself.
Because you mentioned that these aren't the things that go bump in the night. They're the ones that command those things.
Yeah. They do have some control over this region in particular. We do know a little, like, obviously, what are the Barrowites is a question that a lot of Tolkien enthusiasts,
they're dead
back and forth. A couple things we know about them. From the appendices, we are told about, in the Third Age, there's the Great Plague comes around this area. which is in the 1600s. So it says, it was at this time that an end came of the Dunedain of Cardolan, and evil spirits out of Angmar and Ruthour entered into the deserted mounds and dwelt there. So the fact that the spirits, so there were dead Dunedain kings and royalty buried here, and at some point, evil spirits from Angmar came and inhabited these bodies. And so, to me, that says that the Witch King sent these things.
Yep.
And
That's what I found.
I then think about the fact that we know, and we'll know this a little later on in the Fellowship of the Ring, the Morgul knives, right? They, when stabbed by one, which the Witch King stabs Frodo with one, they can turn you into essentially a wraith that is perhaps something like a proto Barrow White or something, a spirit that could be trolled by the Witch King. So one theory would be, hey, during these wars, the Witch King had his Morgul knives, killed a bunch of Dunedain, essentially, took their spirits, and then when the time was right, had them go in on his behalf, inhabit these graves to make them basically sacrilegious. Like this is a sacred site. It's been a sacred site for the Dunedain and the Pre-Edain since the First Age, thousands of years, and now it's been corrupted entirely. That's kind of my thought, my most likely scenario for what these Barrow-wights are.
And the one that we should have called was Fredegar Bolger.
Yes, exactly. Right. No, if you're going to call anyone, you call Fredegar.
I mean, of course.
Frodo is Bilbo's cousin, after all, and later on, Weathertop, he will again save himself of poetry.
Oh, yeah. Good point. Yes, they are very literate when it comes to remembering rhymes and rhyme schemes.
Mm-hmm. Tolkien had the unseen world touching the seen world, and it came from Angmar. Yeah.
Yeah, that duality, which we again, he doesn't spell it out crystal clear, but there's that. You're right, that unseen world that it touches, it kind of pushes through into the seen world, but to what extent is always a little mysterious.
Yeah, I like the idea of the Morgul knives as well. So it seems like we have 3 people on board with that. And we have got several other songs from Tom. We got to recite all of them.
All right, I like it. I like the commitment. I like the commitment to the poetry.
I like these ones. Old Tom Bombadil is a merry fellow. Bright blue his jacket is, and his boots are yellow. None has ever caught him yet, for Tom, he is the master. His songs are stronger songs, and his feet are faster. Then you got, you know what, Dan, you can recite the next one.
Get out, you old wight, vanish in the sunlight, shrivel like the cold mist, like the winds go wailing, out into the barren lands far beyond the mountain. Come and never here again, leave your barrow empty, lost and forgotten be, darker than the darkness, where gates stand forever shut till the world is mended.
Now, the world is going to be mended with the second music of the Ainur. We know that. So he's kind of casting them out forever.
It does seem like he cleans out the barrow. I'm like, why didn't you just do that earlier? But yeah, he has the power to basically just banish this creature and take all the stuff out. And, he's like, all right, well, that mound's, white free.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an incredibly powerful ability that he has. And again, this isn't in the forest. Keep in mind, so he doesn't need to only be in the trees within the forest to have power. This is adjacent to his lands, but it's obviously close enough that he still has power over this particular realm.
But what's more is that
that's right, Finrod, the greatest of all singers.
Yeah, Finrod, I would argue, is the second greatest.
Well, he did lose in his battle to Sauron, so I guess there's that.
Yeah. The greatest is Luthien.
Good point. Yeah, in the same story.
Yeah, and the other reason why I think it's Luthien is that in terms of the Legendarium, she's probably the most powerful force we ever really see in terms of mortals. I say mortals, but I mean like elves.
Right. She's got her hybrid.
And she's got all the power of a Maiar because she's Melian's ring. And now, so we've got the whites.
There's a sense where they defeat the whole scenario of the whites and this burial ritual, and then they come out and Tom's like, "Oh, you take off those clothes and just run around naked," and they do because they're like, I feel like there's almost like a pagan festival quality to this. There's an Anglo-Saxon ritualistic quality to this. We're hanging out. We're very close to the autumnal equinox at this point in late September. I don't know. There's a feel of like ancient rituals happening on these Barrow mounds. It's kind of what I got out of it.
Yeah, I got the same feeling. And we've got another Tom song, which is "Wake now, my merry lads, wake and hear me calling. Warm now be heart and limb. The cold stone is fallen. Dark door is standing wide. Dead hand is broken. Night under night is flown, and the gate is open." So,
he even rhymed on the spot. He threw out "dead hand is broken." He's referring exactly to this moment. So that he's able to come up with rhymes in the moment. This isn't something he came up with 100 years ago.
No. And that's an art form in it.
It is free verse.
And we also get reference to Carn Dûm. The men of Carn Dûm came on us at night, and we were worsted. And this is Mary who's speaking, still seemingly...
Yeah, he's dreaming this. He's actually experiencing it.
"Ah, the spear in my heart," he clutched at his breast. No, he said, opening his eyes. "What am I saying? I've been dreaming. Where did you get to, Frodo?" So there's I love that part.
Carn Dûm was the Witch King's fortress in Angmar. Translated, perhaps the translation is a little iffy, but it apparently means Red Valley. Is the most accepted translation of that.
Sam and Merry and Pippin were ritually laid out. It makes sense that the whites were preparing them to be converted to wraiths by the Witch King.
Yeah. I like that.
Still, the duel of Finrod and Sauron is way more epic than Tom banishing.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
The nudity and
almost feels like Tom does it too easily, right? It's almost like you're never in doubt that Tom's just going to wipe the floor with these guys. With the Finrod Sauron battle, there's a little like, there's a give and take. Finrod's ahead, then Sauron uses his own innate guilt against him, and anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, and of course, Finrod loses.
Right.
So
you get this feeling here. You've got Mary has this dream of basically being killed, by the forces of Angmar. And in the appendices, we get this bit, which is very instructive to this moment. It says, it is said that the mounds of Tirn Gorthod, as the Barrow Downs were called of old, are very ancient, and that many were built in the days of the old world of the First Age, we talked about this, by the forefathers of the Edain, before they crossed the Blue Mountains into Beleriand. Those hills were therefore revered by the Dunedain after their return, and there many of their lords and kings were buried. This is the important part. Some say that the mound in which the ring-bearer was imprisoned had been the grave of the last prince of Cardolan, who fell in the War of 1409. And so, the obvious implication then would be Mary is dreaming of the last moments of this prince of Cardolan. He's in that Barrow mound. The prince was taken out by a spear to the heart. And then we've got, when Bombadil's splitting up the treasure, as Thomas mentions, setting the seeds for the Witch King's destruction. It says, he chose for himself from the pile a brooch set with blue stones, many shaded like flax flowers or the wings of blue butterflies. He looked long at it, as if stirred by some memory, shaking his head, and saying at last, "Here's a pretty toy for Tom and for his lady. Fair was she who long ago wore this on her shoulder. Goldberry shall wear it now, and we will not forget her." So look, that brings up a whole backstory idea. Well, how does Tom know about this? In the appendices again, Tolkien gives us this info. So he talks about the Prince of Cardolan. And so anyway, I won't repeat that, basically, just to say that this is the grave of the last prince. And those are his burial goods. So this appears to be that burial mound of that prince. I'm guessing the brooch probably belonged to his wife. And the appendices go on to further describe the events of 1409. It says, a remnant of the faithful among the Dunedain of Cardolan also held out in Tirn Gorthad, the Barrow Downs, or took refuge in the forest behind, which would be the old forest. And so I think this is when Tom encountered these people hiding in the forest. So there's this remnant of the Dunedain, perhaps the prince himself and his wife are they're the last resistance. Their backs are to the wall. They're hiding in the forest near the Barrow Downs, and they encounter Tom in some way. And Tom remembers this meeting, even though that's 1,600 years or so earlier. So that's kind of where I think this history is coming from.
Probably just a few minutes to him.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Although he forgets where he put the ring, but yeah, other than that, yeah.
Righteous vengeance visited upon evil. Yeah.
Oh. The idea is that Tom Bombadil hasn't been measured against some forces. Yeah, it's true. We don't know what Tom could do. The nudity in Tolkien is fun. Yeah, it is funny to have them like just running around. It's a rebirth, right? They've been reborn in a sense, and taken out of the Barrow Mound, and now they're fresh and new.
By being armed the way they are, they're reborn from kind of the plain ordinary hobbits they were into the heroes they later will be.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There are cultures where nudity is connected to an aspect of spirituality when used in fiction.
I get that. Yeah. There, and I guess I say there's a sense almost of a ritual, like a pagan ritual or something, like a ritual that goes into this. Something that Tom Bombadil, if he's like the Green Man, for instance, or something like that, would there be some kind of festival in conjunction with that? It just feels like dancing naked on top of a barrow mound. Just feels somehow like it's you're really evoking some type of ancient, long forgotten ritual.
And of course, at the end of the chapter, they're on the road to Bree, and you have, of course, Tom, who rhymes again. Tom's country ends here. He will not pass the borders. Tom has his house to mind, and Goldberry is waiting. And this is in reference to when they invite him to come along to the inn and drink with them. And he ends up refusing because...
Yeah, why not have that guy around? He's just like he's insurance, basically. It's like he's in his environment, he is pretty much... omniscient. He seems to be able to take on all comers. So yeah, you'd want him around as long as possible.
He's omnipotent. But the problem is, it'd be a very dull story if he came along.
Right.
But the other factor is that his boundary is the forest he lives in.
Right. I do feel like his power emanates from a particular zone, and like once he gets too far away from that, he loses his essence essentially.
Or at least he never
ventured. Fatty Lumpkin, yeah, exactly. Fatty Lumpkin, the diminutive form of Shadowfax. Yep.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I think there's. Now I'm going to extend a reference to Studio Ghibli's Princess Mononoke. I think that Miyazaki may have drawn some inspiration from the Tom Bombadil chapters, at least
interesting
for his Spirit of the Forest. The Spirit of the Forest never really ventures too far outside the forest, even though it's omnipotent. But the difference is that Tom Bombadil never has his head cut off, and whereas the Spirit of the Forest does. And once its head ends up cut off, the Spirit of the Forest becomes a spirit of death rather than life. So I just think there's a bit of inspiration taken here, at least in some ways, in a subtle manner.
And to tie together what Thomas was referring to earlier about Tom Bombadil manufacturing the instigating the destruction of the Witch King. We get this quote. This is when he's divvying up the goods. So he's got the brooch for himself. He's going to take it back to Goldberry, and then he picks out these daggers, which are going to become incredibly important for the rest of the series. But for each of the hobbits, he chose a dagger, long, leaf-shaped, and keen, of marvelous workmanship, damasked with serpent forms in red and gold. They gleamed as he drew them from their black sheaths, wrought of some strange metal, light and strong, and set with many fiery stones. Whether by some virtue in these sheaths or because of the spell that lay on the mound, these blades seemed untouched by time, unrusted, sharp, glittering in the sun. A little bit later he says, then he told them that these blades were forged many long years ago by men of Westerness. That's Numenor. They were foes of the Dark Lord, but they were overcome by the evil king of Carn-Dûm in the land of Angmar. Few now remember them, Tom murmured. Yet still some. This is a big Aragorn reference. Yet some go wandering, sons of forgotten kings, walking in loneliness, guarding from evil things, folk that are heedless. So he's doing a little prefacing Aragorn there, and he hands them these daggers that were basically of Numenor make. Or at least made by men of Numenor heritage on Middle-earth. And so this is the dagger that eventually Merry is going to use to break the spell on the Witch King by clipping his heel, and that by having that spell of invulnerability drop, it allows Éowyn to kill the Witch King. And so, good. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Can I comment? It also sets a tone for the kind of man Strider is. He's a very lonely fellow who's had to live. Just to make a reference to one Arthurian movie, he's had to sleep with a sword as his bedfellow rather than any woman or something. So it's a very lonely existence.
Well, and the fact that the folk are heedless of the evil he's guarding them from, it means he's doing it not for attention. He's not doing it for,
he's doing it for others, and there's no thanks, there's no companions for the most part that he can travel with. He's leading a very, very lonely, very cold existence, and one that few men can endure, and yet Aragorn has endured it for decades and has endured it well. But as I said, his primary sleeping companion is his sword.
But to finish out the chain of events leading to the Witch King's demise from this dagger is you have so that even though the Dunedain and this Prince of Cardolan, for instance, were defeated by the Witch King, the Witch King was in turn defeated by one of their daggers retrieved from a Barrow mound that wouldn't have even been touched by our heroes if the Witch King hadn't roused the Barrow Wights to attack them. So the Witch King basically laid the seeds for his own destruction. I would say not Tom Bombadil. In a way, it's the Witch King, because the Witch King doesn't rouse these spirits a few days earlier. They're not basically our heroes walk past this area during the day. They're not going to go into a mound without being pulled into one. So they never would have had the daggers. Merry wouldn't have the dagger at the end. So the Witch King, in a sense, basically is a little too smart for his own good. And ends up bringing about his own destruction.
Yep. Real quick, thank you, Formal Goose Foundation, who's over on Twitch, for fixing up the chat for us. I didn't know.
Oh, great. Thank you, Formal Goose.
Problem. So kudos to you. 3 cheers for Formal Goose Foundation. The dog's at the door.
Yeah, I know.
We could let him in. When the spirit of the forest is beheaded, all the animals go wild and lose their sentience. I wonder if Tolkien would think Tom to still be an active spirit in the modern world. That's a good point.
Oh, yeah. I would say yes. I think he's fairly timeless in that way.
Yeah.
Like, what would be the way to defeat Tom Bombadil? Or, would be to get rid of all nature, maybe? If you live on Coruscant, maybe you don't have Tom Bombadil. I don't know.
Yeah. Hung on his own petard. Yeah. And you have Formal Goose Foundation. What are mods for? Right?
Right. Well done.
He or she is a really great mod.
Oh, doggos are good boys. Yes, they are.
Yes, they're always perfect, especially this one.
It's like thinking of the events of this chapter, I couldn't help but think that because the hobbits are young by hobbit standards, they're in a dark place.
Well, Frodo's middle-aged.
I know, but here it is. Frodo calling for Tom Bombadil is like a child calling for their father.
Yeah.
And we brought up the point that it almost seems he's kind of a paternal figure to them in these days leading up to this. Yeah. I like that.
And then saying, I'm not going with you. You guys have to go through with it. It's like the father saying, no, I can't be protecting you your entire life.
Yeah. He also directs them to the Prancing Pony and refers them to Butterbur, who is the owner of the Prancing Pony, which he does give them the directions and advice they need down the road. And it's at this point that Frodo takes upon himself the name Mr. Underhill, which
is a reference back to, that's what in chapter 6, I believe, it's what in one of those poems Tom Bombadil calls his house Underhill. So maybe Frodo was taking a reference. I mean, obviously Underhill is also like our hobbit holes, but perhaps he was taking a reference from his recent experience with Tom Bombadil as well.
It's also a reference to Bilbo, who went Underhill or lives Underhill in The Hobbit. So,
and the fact that they were just Underhill in this Barrow Mound.
Oof, you too, Jet. Yeah. So, will you stop groaning?
Oh, he's adding nice ambient sounds. I like it.
Yeah, and he's being needy because he thinks we should be paying only attention to him. We spoil him rotten. Oh, he's wanting his belly rubbed. Okay.
He's Huon, the Hound of Valinor.
Yep.
The greatest dog in Tolkien's lore, anyway.
Yeah. I already have. Well, I've got my own poem for him, so. And already writing his own story. So
I like it.
Anyways, yeah. So the heroes are on the way to Bree at the end of the chapter, which, thank heavens, I'll just go back to the map. Oh, I seem to have been circling around. All right, so they're finally reaching Bree, which about time.
Right, and this is, as we've mentioned before in previous recaps, you know, a lot of this up to this moment gets cut out of visual film adaptations. The Crick Hollow to this moment, to past the Barrow Downs, tends to get cut out. So we are in some ways returning to where the visual medium tends to pick back up, which is Bree.
Yeah, and the beauty about this part is that we're out of the fairy stories and we're into the larger legendarium. And I don't agree with every creative decision Jackson made and the other people who had to adapt this sort of story. Well, this story specifically made when it comes to Tom Bombadil, but not Tom Bombadil, Lord of the Rings. But I actually agree with them on excluding the Tom Bombadil chapters because they're not exactly relevant to the larger quest at hand. And this is a side quest in a way. Now, I do like the Barrow Downs, and that is relevant to the larger story at hand. But Tom Bombadil is a bit of a side character. He's a sideshow. And this is where arguably the two Tom Bombadil chapters, the one with Old Man Willow and Tom, are in a way Tolkien continuing to meander before jumping into the larger quest.
I'll say one thing that's fun about it. and we see this echoed in various moments throughout the trilogy, is that it suggests that the story transcends the story that Tolkien is telling. Tolkien is telling the story because this is the story that's important, the War of the Ring. But the War of the Ring story is traveling through all of this web. And if I wanted to, as Tolkien, I could go off and tell this story about Tom Bombadil, but I'm not, even though that's an interesting story, because this story is what I'm telling right now. But there's such a giant world that exists around the story I'm telling that really adds a lot of depth to this story. It makes this story seem really important because you're like, oh, okay, you're just giving us little hints of stories that you're not even bothering to fill us in on because you are determined to tell us this story. And so that's one of the things I really appreciate about when you get these hints of a greater world that he's not even going to explain to you. They're just there. And you're like, oh, wow. Okay, awesome. Oh, yeah. And a great point from Mark here. So he's saying, hey, the fact that Tom knows about Barleyman
means he's visited Bree. Yeah.
One possibility is that because we know that Gandalf has kind of left a message there at the Prancing Pony. Maybe Gandalf instructed Tom if the group came by him to send them to the Prancing Pony. Maybe it's possible he learned. But you're right. That's a good question. Does Tom ever go drinking in Bree? I until you just said it, Mark, it hadn't crossed my mind that he would. But now you got me thinking, I wonder.
Well, Tom Bombadil does come across as the sort who's ordinarily he seems like he acts like a drunk. So does he really need to drink anymore?
Yeah, no, great point. Yes, no, but yeah. So that's an interesting question. How did he know about the Prancing Pony? Unless he's just a really good listener and people like Farmer Maggot were telling him about it. But yeah,
okay, we know about Gandalf having met Tom. My bigger question is, and I don't remember because it's been a while since I read Lord of the Rings. Has Aragorn met Tom Bombadil before?
We will find out at the council. I don't. My instant memory tells me no, but I could be wrong. If people can remember whether Aragorn had met Tom at some point, he maybe has heard of him, especially if he's talked enough with Gandalf. But so yeah, that's a good point. Because obviously Aragorn did a lot of traveling. He probably would have found himself in the Old Forest at some point, but whether he encountered Tom is another question.
The only other and here's another question I have. When Tom kind of wanders out of this story, does he wander over into the Hyborian Age and meet Conan? I'm joking.
It's all connected. It's all connected. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. Those are my thoughts, good sir, on good sirs, on these two chapters. Any other final thoughts?
Aragorn said he overheard the conversation with Bombadil, and I think he recognized him. Oh, okay, yeah,
nice.
So he has met him. Yeah,
we know people like Elrond has heard of him. In the council, there are people that are like, oh, right, we call him this name, we call him that name. So at least they've heard of him, if not met him. But yeah.
Yeah, and yes, I'm also getting pretty tired, so my memory's not as sharp as it ordinarily would be. So I appreciate everyone.
Well, that's what we got the commenters for. Yeah. There are instant book checks.
Mm-hmm. Well, them and the dog. The dog.
Them and the dog.
Yes. He knows every bit of lore perfectly by heart. Right, Jet?
We just have to know his language. That's all.
Yeah. Other than Tom Bombadil would.
That's right. So would Fredegar Bulger, or at least according to Mark, I have a feeling. So next time we'll be back on the DorkLords channel to discuss obviously the chapter you guys are really looking forward to. Chapter 9, The Sign of the Prancing Pony.
I love that chapter.
As I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this podcast, I've actually at long last finished recording my latest Tolkien video. So that will be coming out soon. It's just, it took a while to put it together, but I've recorded it. It's a first age story. Anyway, it's going to be out very soon. So what's next up for the brothers?
Let's see. Well, on our end, we've got to finish up our next Silmarillion video, which we're just about finished with all the reading, because, well, we still have to read Agnor and Andrath. We've got over on our Brothers Krynn channel, one more video to our Huma book club, because we're reading The Legend of Huma, which is a very, very awesome fantasy book. And we only have about 40 pages left.
Nice.
We have to do that commentary, then a separate video for a general review, I guess. And we've got several serial fantasy novels over on our Substack, notably novels like Baron Cub, which is like an Anglo-Saxon story of vengeance and kind of answer to Wolf and Cub. We have The Dark Spire Conspiracy, which is kind of...
Yeah, I've enjoyed reading that one.
Oh, yeah, and I've just finished chapters 3 and 4. So I should...
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm behind. All right.
I should send you the third chapter for proofreading then.
Yeah. Go for it.
And that's basically the Volsung saga and other Scandinavian sagas meets Lord of the Rings. And it's my attempt at writing this kind of story. So although I'm still in the meandering phase. I'm still in the...
You need to put Tom Bombadil in there, obviously.
Yeah. Obviously, he's going to show up soon. So, yeah, in chapter 4, it's chapter 5, I finally have started them a bit on the quest, but they're going to meander a little.
Okay, fair enough. Meandering is just fine.
Yeah, because it's world building. And then in chapter 7, I'm going to get them on the main road again. So I've got, well, it might be chapter 6. I don't know.
Just get him to the prancing pony. However you do it, just get him there.
Yeah, that's what we're currently working on over on Substack and on Brothers Arda and Brothers Krynn.
You guys are busy. Busy.
Yeah, very busy. So do support the DorkLords. You could follow him over on his YouTube channel, which I hope I put that in the description this time. There are times I forget to put things in the description and I put it in the comment section. But let me see. I'm just going to make sure. Just do bear with me, people. Let's make darn sure Matt's links are there. Oh, yep, they are. So I didn't forget this time. That's a victory.
Many thanks.
Oh, yeah, I know. Freddie can wander into...
Yep, if Tom can go into Conan, then so can Frediger. Exactly. Frediger Bolger. He would defeat Conan.
Yeah, so do go subscribe to Matt at the DorkLords. Links in the description. And don't forget to follow us here on Brothers Arda and Brothers Krynn and our Twitch respectively. And you could, well, I think we've got the Substack link in our description. So do check us out over there. Give us a follow over there, as we tend to write a lot of literary essays, a lot of Tolkien stuff, and also quite a lot of fantasy novels. So next time we'll be doing this over on Matt's channel with at the sign of the prancing pony. So until next time, toodaloo, people.
Farewell. Farewell, everyone.
And remember, well, the main heroes of the story right now are Tom and Fatty.